So welcome to the MMT Tech Meetup. Today we've got like a fantastic set of speakers. So I'm just going to get started. So today's MMT Tech Meetup is more about women in tech, and there's going to be great speakers on these topics and their journeys. And I feel like I've already seen some of the slides, a sneak peek, and I'm looking forward to hearing about these topics as well. So I think you'll all be really happy to hear what they've got to say. So the MMT Tech Meetups, and obviously who runs them, it's really just myself. So my name's Ilesh Mistry, and I'm a CMS specialist and a content MVP, and you can contact me using the QR code if you want to, sign up to LinkedIn or connect to LinkedIn and Twitter, etc. And the MMT Tech Meetup is run or utilized from our company really. So we basically it's called MMT Digital, the company I work for, and we want to be helping our clients build digital products that perform and transform their business performance really. So if you want to get in contact with them, then their QR code is on the right as well. Something I have to put in there is very important really for us anyway. As MMT Digital are growing, we definitely are looking out for people like yourselves, so there's lots of jobs available and opportunities should you want to kind of change careers, and use the QR code on the bottom there if you want to have a look at the opportunities we have available. So the MMT Tech Meetups, just a quick summary of what they are. Generally, they're front-end driven topics, and we tend to kind of be, running them every month, if possible. If you want to know more about these tech meetups, follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter, and you'll hear about future ones. And also later on, I'll talk about the recording, but you'll get access to the recordings quite quickly by that way as well. And I feel like, like these meetups give a great opportunity for people to speak and present. And if you ever want to talk at future meetups or know someone else is going to be really good for it, then let me know on the topics that you feel they would be good to speak at. And just a couple of things really before we get started. Add your questions in the chat if you have anything during the sessions, and then I'm sure at the end of each presentation there'll be an opportunity to ask questions at the end as well. We will be recording. We've already started recording. Apologies, I should have said that at the start. But we have been recording the sessions, and hopefully if you need to kind of pop out or miss some sessions during tonight's event, then you can by all means catch up with the recordings after it's been kind of finalized. And really helpful if you could do this, but you can start like sharing this on social media. It'll be really good to kind of help with the presenters as well. So for me, I kind of, thought about like why, what shall we do? Like why should we do like a MMT Tech Meetup for women in tech, etc. And it kind of alerted me way, last year really, when I was like looking at colleagues that are going to women in tech conferences, and then I thought, okay, like this month, March is coming up, and it felt like a great opportunity to celebrate International Women's Day. So with that, and along with Women's History Month, this month as well, we felt it was like a great opportunity to get these speakers and tell us their story really. So I don't want to talk too much because it's their time. So I'm just going to quickly say who's going to be up. So we've got Abbe first, and she's going to be talking about why diversity in tech is so important. Then Laura, her sort of journey from Payroll to DevRel within a year. Daisy then talking about her experience in women in tech. And then Zahra, she's going to be talking about her journey from digital marketer to front-end engineer during the pandemic, which we know is tough for everyone. And then we've also got Zaneta talking about content consistency on social media and web. And then Regine talking about inclusive design for digital web. So I'm going to hand over to Abbe, our first presenter. Just let me know when you're ready, Abbe.
I'm ready, Ilesh, thank you.
Okay, over to you.
Great. Okay, right. Let me just share my screen. Bear with me for just one moment. Sorry about this. Okay, I'm about to say that phrase that everybody's probably sick of everybody hearing, but can you see my screen? No? Oh
No.
gosh, this is going well, isn't it? Great start. 1 second. It says I'm sharing it.
I think we can see it, but it's black. It has Chrome and all of your
Oh,
bar at the top,
okay.
but it's just a dark screen.
We're still seeing Ilesh's screen.
Yeah.
There it is.
Got it?
Yep.
Yeah, woohoo! Great start. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your help. Great. So I'm here to talk today about why diversity and representation in tech is so important. And I'm just going to start off with a little bit of an intro about me. So my name is Abbe Smith. I'm the recruitment manager here at MMT Digital. I started with MMT about 3 years ago, and it was really my first experience within the tech sphere. I had recruited for the odd kind of project manager or database administrator in the past, but mostly my recruitment experience had been within financial services and retail. And working in HR and recruitment, it's quite a female heavy specialism, which I mean has its own pitfalls and challenges. And when I first arrived at MMT, I walked in and I thought, wow, there's quite a lot of guys here. There's not many female faces around. And to be clear, MMT, since I started, has always been very welcoming and very inclusive. But there was a time not that long ago in the grand scheme of the age of the company when there were no women that worked there. There was somebody who was still working there when I left, who was the first woman who worked at MMT. And we've been making real strides in increasing the diversity of our teams. We've got a great group of diversity and inclusion champions who are really pushing forward some great initiatives and are really passionate about this. We do a lot to celebrate our diversity. We're hiring more diverse people, and we've worked on our policies and processes to ensure everyone feels really welcome and supportive. But I'm not going to sit here for 10-15 minutes just talk about how great MMT is. Really, I wanted to talk more generally about why diversity and representation in tech is so important. It's something that the tech world has been talking about for decades. There's panels at conferences, there's books, there's podcasts, there's meetups and events such as this, and yet the numbers are still quite discouraging. Marginalised groups, namely women and minorities, are still really severely underrepresented in the tech industry. But why is that so important? Well, tech is everywhere. It's in most parts of our lives now, and that's only going to continue and grow. Every little thing that we do has some kind of impact on, or tech has some kind of impact on it. And that means that by having a limited pool of people or group of people offering advice and leading this kind of complete revolution in how we live, work, exist, is going to have some real impacts. And at the core of it, the more differing viewpoints, opinions, and ideas you have, the better. So I've got a few examples over the next couple of slides of where design or tech just doesn't work for a wide group or a wide part of the population. So you'd look at this picture of this art gallery and think, oh, that looks quite nice. Nice, sleek design. Kevin MacLeod would be quite happy on that if it was on Grand Designs. It looks very neat, very tidy. But hang on a second, if you were a person who wore a dress or a skirt, or somebody who wore a cultural dress that wasn't a pair of trousers, how comfortable would you be standing where that person is, looking really closely at that piece of art when the people walking underneath you, if they glance upwards? So whilst it might look beautiful, it's not very practical, and actually could be quite exclusive, I can't say the word, but may exclude a group of people from being able to actually truly experience that space. There's multiple examples of tech that's been written and tested by a non-diverse group of people, where bad ideas have slipped through the net and things simply don't work. So in this example, it's an automatic soap dispenser which recognizes a white hand but doesn't recognize a black hand. There's so many examples out there as well of things like facial recognition software not recognizing non-white facial features, or even just the color of people's skin. And if that's been tested by a group of, let's be honest about the typical makeup of the tech industry, white men, then if nobody spotted this and it's not come up in testing, then this is when things like this can get through and out into the general population and causes issues and impacts for areas of the population as well. And accessibility is a really important factor to consider as well. If tech is being such a huge part of our life, and people need to be able to use tech and digital services to be able to actually do very basic things, and we need to make that as accessible for everybody as possible. So that could be things like using poor color contrast, such as this example, where people with visual impairments won't be able to actually access this service very easily. If people rely on a keyboard and your links and buttons are not accessible with the keyboard, then that may rule out another group of people. If you don't have alt text on images, things like that, it all adds up to a poor experience at the end of the day to people for sites that they may well need to use in order to get by on a day-to-day basis. So if this is the problem, how did we actually get to this point? So if we look at, there's a really good book I've heard recommended by a lady called Emily Chang called Brotopia, which is about the major gender disparities in Silicon Valley. And the important thing to remember is that it actually wasn't always this way. By the time the Macintosh was introduced in the 1980s, 40% of computer science degrees were earned by women. And there were several women pioneers in technology at that point in time. And in fact, the first line of computer code was written by Ada Lovelace in the 1840s. But then there was this shift. And just as computers began to head into the mainstream, women's participation in the field plummeted. And in the last decade or so, the percentage of women earning computer science degrees is about 20%. And there's a lot of factors that play into this and play into the kind of continuing lack of representation and diversity in the tech industry. So it goes beyond simple sexism or racism. There are things like microaggressions which happen in tech all the time. For instance, did you know that female engineers on average face 35% more rejections of their code? And simple comments and particular social events, there's all sorts of ways that people can feel excluded. And even if it's not a blatant form of exclusion, those little things all add up and make people feel not welcome in the space and not able to voice their opinions and their thoughts. There's also a real lack of role models as well. There are very, very few women and minorities at the real higher ranks of large tech companies. But even at lower levels, walking into a room or a space where you're the only person that looks like you, you're the only person that has your beliefs, the only person who wants to champion these things, is actually really disheartening. And it can also be chalked up to internalized doubt as well. So many marginalized people, if not all in some way or another, are socialized and educated in subtle ways to make them doubt themselves throughout their lives. And this comes to a front in the form of imposter syndrome, which is a phenomenon that describes the feeling of being undeserving of your success. And like, why am I here? How did I get to this point? I didn't earn this. And that is something that's coded into you from a young age by how you're socialized as a child. And this disproportionately affects women and minorities. And in a business such as tech, where really we're encouraging people to sell their ideas and inflate their ideas and their worth, that can be really problematic and have major impacts. So what can we all do? Now, this isn't something just for women and minorities and underrepresented groups to fight. It's something that we've been trying to fight for years. And whilst there has been progress, it's nowhere near where it needs to be. If you want to deliver better projects, if you want to work with a great range of diverse and talented people and help your team, help your clients, your customers, your society as a whole to feel valued and have the services that they need and they deserve, we all need to step up. And the first thing that you need to do is recognise your own privilege. There will be people on this call who are highly privileged. There'll be people on this call who have a lot less privilege. And there will be people in the middle who have privilege in some areas of their life and not in others. And it's not a competition. We're not going to go through and rank everybody and put it only on people right at the top or right at the bottom to solve this. And sometimes that privilege is something you can't control. We can't control the colour of our skin. We can't control our upbringing, our background. But it's important to recognise when you have privilege and learn how you can use that in a positive way. And that really simply is by stepping up. Letting underrepresented groups use their voices and own their own messages, but use your privilege to amplify them. Champion underrepresented groups. Being an ally to people. If you're in a meeting and a female colleague is interrupted or is being talked over, or somebody from a different race to yours is being undermined or not listened to, then actually use your privilege to shut that down and stop the conversation and refocus on what was being talked about and the positive contribution that that person is making. And if you see or hear something inappropriate, then say something. Like I said before, underrepresented groups have been fighting this battle for a long time, and this is now the time for everybody to step up and help solve this. It's important as well to reflect and look at your company policies and procedures and approaches that they as a whole and you personally take as well. So when it comes to recruitment, looking at your job adverts, are they written in a gender neutral way? The majority of tech jobs are very male coded. They talk about building strong systems, oh man, and that doesn't appeal to everybody. And that was definitely something that was the case at MMT when I first started and I ran our job adverts through a gender decoder. It almost exploded with how male heavy it was written. So we've adjusted the language and to make it more appealing to a broader range of people. Looking at who's representing your company on the open market, is it all middle class young white men who are the face of your company on your website, hosting events, acting as thought leaders? How can you go about championing and increasing the volume of those underrepresented voices? Are you representative of the company as a whole, of society, by just putting those 2 or 3 people forward? And are your company policies fair for all employees? So they take into account a range of different situations and different needs that people may have. And how do you handle concerns for marginalised groups within your company? How are you going about changing the culture within your company to lead to more increased inclusion and that people feel even more valued within the company than from when they start at the beginning? And this isn't something that's going to change overnight, but when every person doing even one small thing, changing one small thing about the way that they work, doing something slightly different about the approach that they're taking, speaking up just that one time can be the thing that tips something. And it can be what shifts the balance and really empowers somebody to continue to grow and to keep championing their own skills and their own knowledge. Just from you saying one thing, it can have a huge snowball effect. And that's it from me, really. I'm always really keen to talk about diversity and inclusion in tech in general, recruitment, love a little chat about recruitment, anything like that. I'm always really happy to have these conversations. And if you wanted to hear more about what we're doing at MMT, what we've done in the past, what's worked for us, quite honestly, some things haven't worked. I'm always more than happy to have chats about this. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I meant to put my Twitter handle on there, but I forgot. If you look at Ilesh on Twitter, because I know he did his earlier, then he's tweeted about me recently. So you'll find me that way in some kind of weird inception way. I probably should have just put it on here. Sorry, long day. Really keen to hear from people. And yeah, I'm really pleased to have been able to talk to you all today, and thank you for the invite, Ilesh, and that's me.
Thanks, Abby. Do you have any questions for Abby? Maybe they'll find something later for you.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
And definitely for your Twitter handle, I'll be sharing that out again.
Tell you what, I'll just pop it in the chat. That would be brilliant. A good idea, wouldn't it?
That's awesome. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so next up we've got Laura. So I guess, Laura, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Hi.
Hey, can everyone hear me okay? Sometimes I get a bit of a delay on my end, so.
Yeah, we can,
cool.
yeah.
Fab. Yeah, so I haven't got like a whizzy presentation for you, so it's just my face and potentially my dog having zoomies in the background because she's just chosen the last like sort of 10 minutes to be running from either end of the house. So just want to talk to you today about sort of my journey into tech and where I'm at currently. So as it says in the title, you know, I moved from Payroll to DevRel in less than a year. I think it's something like 225 days. And essentially just recently somebody asked me at a talk, like, did I regret going into DevRel after going through bootcamp? And that question sort of made me think and made me realize that potentially I wasn't as happy as I could be in my role. And I'm back on the job search again. So I've been in DevRel for about 2 to 3 months and now I'm looking for a role again. So I'll talk to you about that as well, in case anybody ever finds themselves in a similar sort of position. So essentially last May in 2020, I was working in Payroll as a consultant, helping companies to implement payroll software. And again, it was just one of those jobs where I didn't feel fulfilled, I didn't feel challenged, and started to feel a bit bored already after like just a month in. So I started to look around at courses to keep me occupied, and was looking at business analysis initially because it sort of aligned to what I'd been doing in payroll and HR. And I think through that, an ad popped up on Facebook for a 5-day course in HTML and CSS. And just out of curiosity, I took it. And that was it. I was hooked and I didn't put my laptop down for about 3 months. You know, I was getting up early mornings and coding until I started work. And then after work, going straight back onto my computer and working until bedtime. And essentially, I sort of told myself that I'd take on the 100 days of code challenge. And if I was still coding and still loving it and feeling as passionate in 100 days as I was now, then I knew it was sort of something that I should look into as a career. And yes, so 100 days later, I was still coding. And essentially, at the time I was in a relationship with someone who said to me, you know, if you do boot camp, I'm not going to support you. And so I said, right, off you go then. And I put myself through boot camp in September of 2020 and sort of did 3 months with General Assembly, went back over the basics, had some help with JavaScript, which was one thing that I felt like I was banging my head against a brick wall over for months. And did sort of React and the Mern stack, and then a bit of Python as well. And graduated there in December. And pretty quickly had a few jobs, you know, either inviting me to apply or that I'd applied for and was interviewing with. And the one that really interested me was the DevRel, because it was a chance, or so I thought, to do some coding and some content creation. And sort of through my 100 days of code, I'd done a lot of content creation. I'd been sort of blogging and talking on podcasts and YouTube channels. And I felt really involved in the community. And I thought, you know, it'd be really great to be able to do that as part of my job. Unfortunately, the role that I'm doing currently, I haven't been doing as much coding as I would have liked. And as I say, you know, somebody asked me a couple of weeks ago, you know, do you regret sort of paying all that money for bootcamp and then not using your coding skills? And at the time I said, like, no, I don't, you know. I'm fortunate that, you know, out of my cohort, I'm one of the few that's already employed, you know, and I'm getting to learn and be involved in the tech industry already. And then as, you know, I sat down and sort of digested it in the evening, I realized perhaps I wasn't as happy as I thought I was. And what I really missed was the coding. You know, I just sort of, my, you know, I felt this like real burning excitement when I used to code, and it had sort of faded. And I wanted to get back to that essentially. And so I think it was the week before last, I sort of approached this subject with my employer, and I said, you know, is there any room for me in the engineering team? And unfortunately, the answer was no. And so that sort of pushed me to you know, search for roles. And again, I built a good network on Twitter through my content creation. And so when I made the announcement that I was leaving my role, I had quite a lot of people coming to me to say, you know, I've got a role at my company, would you like me to refer you? Or I've got, you know, a role myself, I'm hiring, would you like to apply? And I just say, like, if you are in tech or you're looking to get into it or you're looking to start applying for jobs, definitely networking is massive. I think it's around 85% of roles are filled like solely through networking. So that's huge. And it's amazing what that can do. I mean, today I have like 10 opportunities, 3 tech tests all going on at the same time. And I have an offer already, but I'm sort of, you know, keeping my options open this time. I really want to make the right decision. So, you know, I'm always willing to talk interviews, because I think that's the bit I do well. You know, it's the tech test that I was worried about, but actually I've surprised myself with sort of how I've done with those. But yeah, if you want any hints or tips or just a general chat about, you know, ways to sort of boost your job search, then I'd be more than willing to take any questions that you have.
That's great. So yeah, do we have any questions for Laura? I guess not. So yeah, I guess again, you know, any contact details for Laura, I can send those around as well at the end, or maybe you can add it into the chat, Laura. That would be great.
Yes, yeah, I'll add those in.
Brilliant. And good luck with your tech tests.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Laura. So next up, we've got Daisy. Whenever you're ready, Daisy.
Thank you. Let me just get my PowerPoint up. Great. Am I sharing my bigger screen?
Yeah.
Cool. 1 second. Let me just collapse this one a bit. Oh, sorry. Okay, cool. So my name is Daisy Ward. I'm a front-end engineer at MMT Digital. I started 4 years ago in 2017. I did come here as a placement student though, so if you add that on, I've been here for 5 years. So in my presentation, I'm going to be talking about my experiences as a woman in tech, some of the tech I enjoy using sort of in work and also outside work, and how I came to work in the industry. You can see my social media handles. I'm more active on LinkedIn, but go on Twitter every now and then, so you can always find me there. Cool. So to start off with, I chose to study digital media technology at university. When I was in college, I was looking for something that would combine sort of creative as well as tech. I studied media, photography, and ICT. So I had a quite range of interests, and I thought going into digital media technology might be a good choice. I really like the idea that you can create something from nothing. You can just write a few lines of code and you have something quite visual. I thought that was really cool. So I studied ICT from GCSE, A-level to university. And I did notice in my classes that there was a slow decline in number of females as I went up the different levels. GCSE, I'd say my class was about 50-50, although it is slightly different ICT, it's more sort of spreadsheets and using software. In A-level, I did an advanced diploma in ICT. It was quite business and IT based, that one. I would say that was about 30% females, about 70% men. And then when I got to uni, there was about 10% females on my course. Digital media technology was one of the more sort of female heavy courses. But yeah, there's about 10% in the whole sort of year group. And sometimes, not too often, but I would be in a class now of about 25 people and I'd be the only female there. So definitely was very male heavy. So where I started coding, I started coding at university. My first project, you can see on the right hand side, was a little paint application I made in Python. We had these weekly challenges to do in my first year, and it definitely was a struggle at first. Sort of like Laura, I didn't just naturally become the world's best coder. I put a lot of time and effort into learning, trying to do all my weekly challenges, no matter how long it took. And yeah, my first project was in Python, and then we also did one in JavaScript. And yeah, there was some outdated tech. We did PHP as well for a little bit. But yeah, it was just a good foundation, I think. I wasn't overly confident about my coding ability. I felt I was quite average. But in my second year, I did volunteer to help teach the first year Python, just to sort of go around and see if anyone had any problems. So I tried to get as much exposure as I could, despite not being the most confident at it. So then at university, I took my placement year at MMT Digital. I was looking to see if I would like the tech industry, and I applied as a front-end engineer, so sort of see if I would like that role. Just to give me a bit more of an idea, really. I learned from a lot of experienced people, coding as well as agile, soft skills, sort of how a business runs day to day. And it was quite different because at uni you have, I don't know, 4 or 5 JavaScript files to a repository. And then I came here and there was like, you know, 100 files and a whole Webpack config. Everything was sort of new and shiny. I'd just never seen what the actual industry was like. So yeah, I did work really hard, and it was definitely a learning curve from university. Because as I said, I felt like I was average in my coding. But sort of seeing industry standard and sort of having a better idea of what people in the industry actually did compared to sort of what got you the grade at university was really interesting. And I worked really hard to get my coding abilities up to industry standards, as I said, with a lot of help and support from many experienced people. And it was very nice. I was offered a job once I had completed my university course back at MMT Digital. So now I'm just going to talk a little bit about my experience in the industry over the last 5 years or so. I don't know how many of you have seen the Pixar short Pearl, but it's super cute and I would really recommend it to anyone. You can find it on Disney Plus, or I put the little YouTube link in there. It's quite nice, you can just watch it for free. It's basically about a volleyball called Pearl who joins just an office which is just only men, and it's quite that sort of lad culture. And Pearl doesn't fit in, and she has to change bits of her personality, and she feels really excluded. And it's a really nice short film. I think it's 8 minutes, but it gives you an idea of what it can feel like to be the only woman or minority, or just someone who doesn't quite fit in a new group. And yeah, as Abby was saying, back in the day, back in MMT's days, when I first started, there was very few female developers, and things have really improved. As Abby was saying, things are definitely getting better, and it's really nice to see that sort of push that way in the industry, not just MMT. But I didn't instantly feel welcomed as part of the group, as it was quite a male-heavy environment. If anyone knows me in real life, I'm pretty much like Pearl. I love knitting, I love crafts, and so I didn't share that many hobbies or interests with my peers. And some of the sort of activities, I don't really drink either, so sort of any pub-based ones weren't really for me. Sort of football chat and five-a-side isn't really for me. And I know it doesn't really happen at MMT, but some people like in the industry go golfing, and that's quite a male. There's sort of male-heavy hobbies which have sort of were in the industry. And yeah, as Abby was saying, there wasn't really any role models. I didn't work with any females day to day. We did have a fair few project managers, but yeah, you can definitely see it was a male-heavy company. But at the same time, I could see that there was a lot females could offer. As Abby was saying, about the different viewpoints. And even now, I tend to contribute slightly different things to the team because I've had a different background. And yeah, I think the more diverse the team is, the more different viewpoints you can get, which is really great. Touching on what Abby talked about as well. After my placement year at university, I wanted to research more into what happened to women in computer science. So as part of my final year project at university, I looked into what happened. And as you can see, the number of females was inclining until about 1982, 1983, which was around when the home computers were introduced. As you probably all know, the really archetype picture of the geeky guy with not much social skills, using a big chunky tech now. And that's sort of the image that the media portrayed in the industry really sort of began to exclude females. Sorry, my research showed that they would feel less likely to have the same interests as men, especially sort of how they are portrayed in media as sort of really unsociable. And even now, and it can be a really hard place for women to work. In any industry, sort of if you're assertive, you might be perceived as bossy. But I think this is even harder if it's a very male-dominated environment like the tech industry. And even to this day, when I say I'm a web developer, people think I'm a web designer, and they ask me all about sort of the designs and what I'm designing next. An interesting point, though, when I was doing my research, is that the same issue wasn't really had in some Asian countries, such as India and Malaysia. Sort of when the West was portraying this geeky archetype of a boy coding, wasn't really seen that way in some Asian countries. and it was seen as a good, viable, sort of high-paying career. And yeah, people didn't have any of the preconceptions we had, or fewer at least. So countries like Malaysia still have quite a 50-50 balance of male and female in their fields, which I thought was really interesting, as you can sort of see how Western culture has affected the industry. Let me close. There we go. So now I'm just going to talk about some of the tech I like to use at my free time. And this sort of leads on to what else I did in my final year project. So this is just a little short video of the Free.js library. For anyone who doesn't know what Free.js is, it's a interactive rendering 2D and 3D graphic library within any web browser. So you can basically see some things that you might think quite like, oh, only see on the Xbox or stuff, but you can just see that and play with it all in your browser. On the tech side, it uses WebGL as its base, as well as OpenGL, but Free.js is quite nice in that it's sort of an easier introduction to web graphics. And it's been going for about 10 years now, so it's quite well established, and there's plenty of sort of Stack Overflow questions, and the documentation is pretty good. So that's always handy. And one of the good things about Free.js is it can work on desktop and mobile. So I found this library when I was researching for my final year project. And I found some of the advantages to be that, as you can see on the screen now, I think it's really engaging and interactive. How interactive it is, it really sort of makes you remember the website more. And especially with this handbag one, I think it shows the product so well. I think the rendering of this handbag is really great. I think it looks so realistic, and it's like a pretty unique website. You would definitely remember that website. Another good thing is that it's accessible to many people easily. Some of these things in the past you might have thought you needed a sort of console for, but no, anyone with an internet connection and a web browser can access these, which is really great. This is one of the funnest games I found on the internet. The disadvantages though, it is pretty slow. It does take a long time for the website to load, and it does take a lot of power off the computer. And normally it's used for sort of like short campaigns, like you saw with the handbag one. You wouldn't really use it properly on a big website. And as you can see on the little video, it tracks where my mouse goes and everything like that. So, okay, so another little video. So this is what I did with Free.js. I created it was meant to be an interactive website to encourage sort of females to consider the tech industry. I chose Free.js because the reasons I sort of stated just now. I thought it was really interactive and engaging, and I hope that would sort of make it a more interesting website. Also with that, I thought it might be like a fun example of code, sort of, it's not your standard static website. So as you can see on the screen, I made this 3D model in 3ds Max and then exported it to Free.js, I believe it's JSON, and then did some raycasting with there so I could sort of detect which sort of female role I was hovering over. As you can see, it sort of changes as you hover over the different females. But it was a website anyone can use. Like I said, it's accessible, and it is gender neutral. It just happens to put females in sort of the main role, because there is a lack of role models, and I think it helps females to see themselves in these roles, which typically you only see men in. And it was targeted mainly towards college students. I went to a partnering college of Nottingham Trent University, and I spoke and did some research with college students about their thoughts, and they did think it was really engaging and quite like a unique website. I don't think I'll play the full video, but you get the sort of idea of it. You could go through the different careers, and then each little person had their own little room, and then you could click on explore, and it would tell you sort of key areas about the job. Sort of straight away you could sort of see, oh, maybe I consider this job, or just straight out, this job isn't really for me. And I also provided resources about how to get started, and similar careers as well, to consider looking into. Maybe if, say, backend's not quite right, here's another one, just sort of along them lines. Yeah, as you can see there, just things to get started. So that sort of leaves what I do day to day at work. The tech is quite different to what I do in my spare time. As you can see, we use Kentaco, both MVC and Forms, with React. That's pretty much my day-to-day stack. I'm working on a client project which has been going since I think 2015, and there's 4 repos which we manage for the clients, and we do work on all 4 of them pretty much regularly. They're all a sort of a similar variation of Kentaco and .NET. Like I said, some web forms, some MVC, and recently we've implemented a React layer on top of that, so we could create an e-commerce platform. So we built them a shop, and we have recently just built them a booking platform so people can book through them. And then sort of just leading off from React, we did Formic and Yup for the sort of validation schema to make sure the forms are working nicely. And it did work out quite nicely that we could use similar stack on both of them, both on the e-commerce platform and the booking platform, because it really suited the client well. And it's not cutting edge technology, but it's up to date and it fit the client's needs. So that was really nice. And it just helps to modernize the code base a bit more. And as I said, we have 4 repos that we manage daily. And they have been built by varying development teams, as every website ever has. The code bases are very similar though, so I have been pushing to make sure they are as consistent as possible to help new developers onto the code base. And I've also been pushing for accessibility, which is really nice that the client is really receptive to this. I'm looking to improve the inclusivity of people who can use the website, especially because it's a booking and e-commerce platform. So that's something that definitely needs to be really accessible. And it just helps strengthen the code base going forward, sets a good standard so other developers coming along can meet them standards too. So now I'm just going to talk a bit about what I like to do in my free time. This one is very similar to the Forgetting Stereotypes website. In my free time, I tried some more 3GS again. It's just a work in progress. This game is where you just go around the little sea and you have to collect coins. I haven't quite wired it up quite right yet. You're meant to have a score, and then the mines are meant to sort of, if you touch a mine, are meant to sort of, end the game. But as you can see, when the camera detects a collision between the object, the coin disappears and then moves into a random place. I just wanted to try a few new things out with 3GS. I wanted to try more sort of models within 3GS. I did make the coin model in Blender. And yeah, I just wanted to try it. I had never done that sort of 3D camera movement as well as sort of collision with that. So I wanted to try that out. There's loads of cool 3GS examples on the 3GS website. So I really recommend. You can just spend hours looking at really cool websites. So that's a really great place to start. And this is again what I like to do in my spare time. As I said before, I really like creative and tech. And at university, I learned how to do 3D modeling. I do really enjoy it, but it is really stressful, especially at uni when you have deadlines. But as a hobby, it's much more enjoyable. As you can probably tell, I really like the low poly style. And originally at university, I learned how to do 3D modeling with 3ds Max, but because that's very expensive, I'm having to relearn it with Blender, which is similar enough, but also different enough that I have to spend time relearning. It did greatly help with learning 3GS. They're very similar in terms of theory. You just have a slightly sort of graphical user interface with 3ds Max and Blender, and you're basically doing the same things, but just with lines of code in 3GS, sort of controlling the frustum of the camera, sort of controlling where the lighting goes. That's all pretty much the same, just a little bit different. And finally, this is my final sort of what I do in my spare time. Recently, I came across Shopify's Draggable plugin, and I thought it was really cool. It's another example of how I really like interactive technologies, as well as like quite creative, where you combine code with being creative. So the Shopify plugin, basically, this is just one version of it. This one is called Droppable, I believe, where you can drag and drop different things from one placeholder to another. And as you can sort of see, I'm putting the different LGBT flags into the correct placeholder. And as you can see, I'm trying to put the bisexual flag in the pansexual flag, and it just won't work because, yeah. And it's sort of like an education tool. I think it has great potential for that. And I really like how they have thought about accessibility in that. Otherwise, it, you know, wouldn't be as great for education, which is one of the letdowns of 3DS. It's not very accessible in terms of sort of screen readers and keyboard navigation. But yeah, I really like the potential of Shopify, and I just made this quick sort of proof of concept to play around with it. So I did cover a lot, but if you have any questions or any comments, you can find me on Twitter or LinkedIn, or if you're at MMT, you can always just Slack me. Yeah, thank you. That's everything.
Thanks, Daisy. Really good. I think there's some questions in the chat.
Okay. Okay. So I'm just trying to find the right section. So how easy, difficult was it to get started with GL? Initially, I was quite daunted by it, especially reading a lot about OpenGL and OpenGL shaders. That's a pretty scary topic, but I found 3GS to be the most practical at getting started, especially with all the cool tech on the website. It definitely makes you inspired to try it. And they have some quite nice examples there. I have tried React with 3GS. It was quite tricky, that one, but it is possible. So yeah, they're definitely always expanding. But yeah, a bit daunting, I'm not gonna lie. Do you think working as a dev helps you feel more confident playing around with things in your spare time? Yeah, definitely. I've learned so much just day to day, and yeah, it definitely gives me confidence that if I can do my 9-to-5 job, I can definitely do what I want in my spare time. And yeah, it's really great because like I said, I've learned so much at work, and then I can apply that not just to work, but to my spare time projects. Yeah, I think that was all of the questions. Oh, was there anything you did or could suggest that eventually improves the situation for me? I believe that was probably referring to when I first started at MMT. Yeah, like I said, diversity and inclusion has greatly increased, not just at MMT, but in the whole tech industry, which is great. Yeah, we've definitely got more diverse people now. What can improve? It's probably quite a big vision picture in which sort of you would have the more diverse team. So any sort of young female joining wouldn't feel what I did. But that's a very big sort of aim to get to. But as sort of discussion of being sort of an ally to women and how you can sort of change your behavior or sort of recognize when you're maybe doing quite male heavy dominated behavior, I think that's a great step just to help him with that. That was all the questions. Sorry if I missed any.
That's brilliant. And I guess if anyone's got any more questions, please pop them in the chat. That's great. Thank you, Daisy. Next up, we've got Zahra. So just let us know when you're ready as well, please.
I'm just gonna set up my screen. Okay, so I'll be talking about how I made a career switch during a pandemic from digital marketing to front-end engineering. And this is like my journey into how I found the guts to do it. So I'm Zahra. I'm a front-end engineer at BlockFi. I recently started my job in the beginning of February, so I'm a fairly new developer. And previously, I was in digital marketing, and I've had like a long list of experimentation and different careers, and I feel like I've lived so many lives during my 20s. And previously I was in digital marketing, but before that I was in special events for like 3.5 years. And during college, I did PR and marketing in the fashion industry. And fashion was like the thing I thought I was going to go into until I went into it and was like, I don't like this. And then I went into special events marketing, and that was fun, but it just wasn't intellectually stimulating. And then a year into digital marketing at a web design agency, I decided that I just like this, it wasn't going to work for me. And I was already intrigued by web development. In 2016, I started self-teaching myself JavaScript. And that's when I graduated college, and I ended up going to this music festival that was very tech focused. And they had art installations that were coded, and they were done with Arduino. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. I want to create art. And I was always into art. So it was interesting to see that you can combine tech with anything in the world that you want to, because it's in everything. Like you can get a mug and there's an app attached to it that you have access to, or like your doorbell has an app attached to it because you need access, you can view whoever is visiting you at the door. So in 2016, I started self-teaching myself through Flatiron School's bootcamp prep course, because that's the only thing like I saw that was accessible, that was for free. However, when I was in college, my final semester, I did take a computer ethics course, and the instructor told us to, or like mentioned Team Treehouse, which I kind of tried out, but it wasn't free, so I didn't really stick to it. So in 2017, I started attending meetups at Flatiron School that were very like women in tech heavy, and then also just hearing people's perspectives on how they made career switches and what they did to land a job, or what difference they were making in the industry. And I was like, oh my God, I want to be surrounded by individuals who are like so smart and creating some change in the world. But so I started doing that. And then like in March of 2017, I learned about the 100 Days of Code Challenge, and I got involved in the tech Twitter community. And I met one of my friends who's here, Clara, through that. And we've been like chatting it up and like talking about tech since then. And I'm still in touch with her. So I thought that was cool that like there was a woman who was like doing something similar and teaching herself, and I wanted to do the same. However, in June 2017, I was kind of coding, but I fell into another career path full time because there's all this societal pressure. And it's like, my parents are like, you need to get a job. You've been out of college for a year. What are you doing? And I was working in a restaurant at the time. So at that restaurant, I asked them if I can work in their corporate offices full time because I was there for so long. And I ended up in event marketing because of that. But then in like July 2018, it was still like in the back of my head. So in July 2018, I took a creative coding course at FIT I don't think I mentioned I'm from New York, by the way. So I took a robotics course at FIT because that's originally what I was fascinated by. And I was like, let's see what this is about. Let's see how the Apple Watch is made. So they talked about processing JS. And I was like, ooh, this is really cool. And they gave us an Arduino kit. And I learned how to create lights, LED lights to light up and code them to light in different patterns. But I was like, okay, this is really good knowledge to have. But then I kind of just like was still in my full-time job. And then in September 2018, I applied to the Flatiron School and I got rejected. And Flatiron School, if you don't know, they have a tech assessment that you have to take when you apply to them. So you can't just get into boot camp. You have to go through like what you would go through during a job interview. And I just didn't have enough knowledge, or I got nervous, and they were like, oh, we see that you have potential, but I think you'd be qualified for our online course, not our in-person course. You need more practice. So I was like, all right, maybe I'll just continue coding and practice more. But I got kind of discouraged, so I gave up a little bit. Then fast forward to April 2019, I applied to General Assembly because it's still in the back of my head. I was like, I want to do this. I just don't know how. And I got accepted, but I couldn't afford it. So I was like, all right. And then I got a job in digital marketing at a web design agency. And I was like, okay, maybe I can make a career switch within a company, do marketing, and then end up in web design and do engineering. But I found out that their engineers were actually outsourced in Ukraine. So, and we barely got to work with them, but I did learn a lot about web development through a marketing perspective, which I think is so important. And I'm realizing that now in my current job where I'm like, you see certain things on the platform that you can help improve because you have that marketing perspective and the UX perspective. So don't ever dismiss marketing. It is important. Success is not a linear line upwards. My life has just been a roller coaster of experimenting in different pathways. And I'm like, am I even cut up for this? And there's so many times I've asked myself that. However, it is worth it. So in 2020, in 2020 happened and the pandemic happened, and I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna quit my job because I found an opportunity. We're all working from home, and I didn't have to it made more sense financially, and I just found the opportunity to tell my job that I wasn't fulfilled. So I left. But before I left, I applied to General Assembly and I got in again. But this time General Assembly was offering a no upfront tuition program. So that helped me afford it during a pandemic because people were losing their jobs and I definitely couldn't shell out 15 grand. So it made sense. And they offered incredible training for me, especially working in group projects and working on individual projects, which pushed me to build projects that I wasn't doing on my own. I was teaching myself and hung up on tutorial hell and teaching myself fundamentals and getting stuck on that instead of actually building stuff. So it pushed me. And within 4 months of graduating, I landed my current job. And then what I did in my job search process to stand out, I would say never underestimate the presence of social media. I started posting what I was learning publicly on Twitter, and I joined the 100 Days of Code challenge again. And I feel like it helped me connect with people who were doing something similar as well and job searching, because I feel like if I didn't have the community that helped me through all of this, I wouldn't have landed the job that I did. And there were people who offered so many useful advice. Like Laura is one of them. She offered me a lot of useful advice. And I didn't take the traditional route when I was applying to jobs. I didn't fill out applications. I mean, I did in the beginning because that's what our career coach told us to do, but it was taking so long, and every time I would get rejections and I was like, oh my God, this is so discouraging. How am I supposed to stand out? I probably landed like one interview, and that was like 3 months after I graduated that they contacted me and were like, oh, we're happy to interview you. But like, I knew quickly like it wasn't going to work out because my previous jobs I had gotten from people I knew. So I made myself active in Women in Tech Slack channels as well, and Women in Tech job boards. And I contacted people personally instead of applying or like filling out their applications, and I asked for referrals as well. I got a lot of rejections, but I did land a lot of interviews because of that. And sometimes when I reached out to those people, some of them weren't hiring junior engineers because your first job's always going to be hard to get. They're always looking for someone more senior. And I decided that I would ask them to take their technical assessment anyway, because the more technical assessments you take, the more confidence you'll get. And technical assessments are so hard, and it makes me so nervous to do them. Every time I've gotten them, I was always so nervous and was like, I would talk myself into giving up and was like, I'm not cut out for this. So I just asked them if I can take their assessments. And then also getting your first assessment is sometimes hard too, because people are like, oh, we're not hiring juniors. So I just decided to ask them if they would just give it to me anyway. And who knows, like if I did the technical assessments, what would have come out of it. But a lot of them I did. I took like a few months to do them, but I took my time and I never really submitted them, but I just got exposed to it. And I tried talking to as many people as possible. And I encourage everyone just to not to get discouraged. Like I know I got discouraged and I didn't always believe in myself, but like connecting with people and having a community to talk to made me feel less alone in the journey. And even if that connection doesn't lead to a job, it's still a learning opportunity, because I know that like some of the friends I've made in this journey, there are people I can still like contact and be like, oh, I'm feeling imposter syndrome. How did you deal with this? Or like, what are you doing to deal with it? And sometimes at your current job, like you're the only new person. So you're like, you don't have someone to connect with who's new. But I do have a supportive team. So I think that makes a really big difference. The Slack channels I wanted to offer you guys are like Ladies Get Paid. There's a ton of women on there who post jobs, and I contacted them directly, which is where I landed some interviews. And when I was interviewing for my current job, I was also interviewing for another UX engineer job. And I got that through this channel. This woman kept tagging me in job posts that she thought I'd be qualified for, because I kept posting like I'm looking for a job. And these women are down to help you. So you definitely like won't be alone in the process if you truly put yourself out there. I also joined Built by Girls. They have a Slack channel, but also they have a program where you can mentor young students who are looking to get into tech as well. And it's once a month for 3 months. And then you get assigned like a new mentee to mentor for their career path. I also joined Women Who Code meetups sometimes. Sometimes it was intimidating to join those meetups, but like the Slack channels, they also post jobs that you can contact the person who posted them directly. And then there's Remote Woman and Tech Ladies Facebook group, which you can find so much advice on even like navigating uncertainties at a job or navigating sexism at a job, and it's all posted anonymously. So these are really useful. Then some others were front-end mentored. They're very project focused. And then Breaking Into Tech, I wasn't super involved in Breaking Into Tech, but I know that they also have a job board. So virtual meetups, there's a virtual meetup on Twitter that I discovered. It's called virtualcoffee.io, and they're full of like senior and junior engineers, and you can get like perspective. And I feel like I joined a few of them and made me feel more comfortable. I haven't joined them in a while, that specific one, but I do feel like it gets more exposure to who you are, and people get to know you and your face more often, and you get to like tell your story. And if someone knows of someone, like you never know where it could lead. There's also this like platform called Clearbit. If you're in the job search process, I think it's a powerful Chrome extension where you can get personal emails. It allows you to find the email addresses of employees and email them personally instead of going through the application process. I made a list of 100 emails when I was doing this, and I messaged like probably 2 people before I even I landed my job. But this was like a step I was going to take. I was going to email all of those 100 people and tell them my story. And obviously, like if you're emailing 100 people, you're going to get some reply back. So it's a really, really powerful tool. And then building soft skills. I feel like because I'm so junior, I'm not the best engineer right now. And hopefully I will be in the future. But I think it was the way that I communicated my passion for the field and learning that got me that job. And I do think like communication in the form of soft skills in the form of good communication and empathy and like knowing how to build relationships and listening and just like being a good person without expecting and making genuine connections can lead you so much further than any tech skills, because tech skills can be learned. And I know I'm going to learn it, but I do think like if I didn't connect with people on Twitter or those Slack channels, I wouldn't have gotten those interviews. And I landed my job because I connected with someone on Twitter. So I do think it's an untraditional way, but it works. And you have to utilize the skills that you have and use them as your strength instead of thinking that they don't matter and the tech skills are the only thing that matter. So some people might be wondering, like, how do you build some of these skills? When I was in college, I worked in retail to build some of my skills because I didn't really know how to talk to people. One of the skills I'm building is giving this presentation. It's my first one. So I have stage fright, but I've never done one before. And it's a skill that I want to build and be able to talk clearly and like communicate my message clearly. So I think it just involves like being open and being vulnerable to situations. So if you haven't done it, I challenge you to reach out to someone you wouldn't normally and just have a conversation and see where it leads you. There's a book called 52 Cups of Coffee, and I kind of tried to do a mimic of it on Lunch Club, which is an incredible tool for connecting with people. And they do all the work for you, where you put the time that you're available and they'll match you with someone and they'll send you the Google invite. And I was doing my version of 52 Cups of Coffee on a dev blog where I was writing about people I was having virtual coffee with. And I wanted to do one coffee per week for 52 weeks to see what I could learn. And who knows, like someone could know someone, or they could have a friend who knows someone that's looking for what you're looking for, and it's a connection. So my project has been paused because I landed the job and I needed to focus on that, but definitely something like I want to continue in the future doing. But it is like something that will help you get out of your comfort zone and just talk to people. My final thoughts is landing your first job in tech is not easy, but it doesn't mean like you should get discouraged. I have spoken to a few people who have told me that they've gotten really discouraged because they failed a tech assessment. And I've failed so many tech assessments that I was like ready to give up and was like, I don't know if I made the right choice. And then the right opportunity came to me. And instead you can think about ways where you're making a difference and how to get yourself to stand out. People do think like, if you're a developer, you you can create a portfolio and you'll get a job, but make sure your portfolio design looks well, because tech recruiters don't have the tech skills to know what good code looks like. They just see the visual aspect of it and then they assume you're a good coder, even if the code is shit. So I have learned that through my bootcamp, that you should just have a well-designed portfolio, have communication skills, and like learn to talk to people. And all it takes is like one person to say yes. And if you're taking all the steps, it's about time someone's gonna say yes. And having like a growth mindset, I fell into comparing myself to people who had 6 years of experience, but I learned that you shouldn't do that, because you should only compare yourself to where you are now versus where you want at day one. Like I've grown so much, and I'm sure everyone else has too. And like writing down those wins matter. And then in moments of defeat, remind yourself of who you are and why you're doing it, and remind yourself of how far you've come, because like it is definitely easy to feel like you don't deserve it, or you're not good enough, or you don't matter, or like that you probably won't ever get it, but you will. I know like some of the things I did when I felt defeated was I just stepped away, and I wouldn't code on the weekends. I would spend time having adventures, and that cleared my mind when I like was doing the job search process to come on Monday and code again and like do my job search. So that's it for me. Thank you for listening, and you can reach me at Twitter if you have any questions, or LinkedIn.
It's brilliant, thank you. So I think there might be a couple of questions in the chat for you.
So I ended up finding my current job on Twitter. The VP of engineering reached out to me from BlockFi, and he was like, oh, we're hiring if you want to go through the process. And I was like, oh, well, I'm very junior and I don't know if I'll do well. And he was just like, just give it a shot. We'll see what happens. And I ended up doing really well. The thing was like, this company didn't offer tech test. They offered a technical conversation. I had like 3 conversations about the tech stack that they're using. So it was helpful to talk about that. Thank you about the illustrations. I did try to use recruiters. However, and I was working with a recruiter before I landed my job. However, I felt like that recruiter was pushing me to apply to jobs that were more marketing related. I got a lot of that while I was applying to jobs too, where people were like, no, you won't land a job as an engineer right away. You'll have to do freelance work, or you'll have to just work in some kind of marketing field. And I was like, no, that's not what I want. So I didn't really, there's probably one job that the recruiter gave me that that was engineering, but the rest were all marketing related. And that's not what I wanted to do. And even like some of the recruiters at GA, they were pushing me careers based on my background, not what I wanted to do. And I'm like, well, I didn't invest this much time to do the same thing. So yeah, that was my experience with recruiters.
Okay, great. If there's any more questions, please drop them or contact Zahra as well. That's great, thank you. Next up, we've got Zaneta. Over to you, please.
Okay, hi there. Very excited to be here. So let me share my screen. Okay, hope this works. So can you see the slides, Ilesh? Can you confirm?
So we can see your, yeah, if you go to, yeah, we can now, yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm here today to talk about content consistency. I work as creative writer at Kentico Content, which is one of 2 products by Kentico Software. And in case you're wondering how I started working for a software development company, Kentico Software, there's really no superhero origin story. I studied languages, English philology, so I'm a linguist. And one day I decided to quit my job at university, and I wanted to focus more on writing. So I Googled copywriter jobs, and here I am. It's been nearly 2 years. And one of those crazy people that care a lot about commas and dangling modifiers and participles and cohesive devices, repetition of words, that kind of stuff. So, you know, I'm probably not a very fun person to be around. However, these skills are awesome if you want to ensure the content you're producing for your audience is consistent. So now let me introduce the copy editor starter pack. Yeah, I'm hoping all of you are going to change your careers at the end of my presentation. That's my ulterior motive, my evil plan, because as I've mentioned, I'm not a superhero, I'm the villain. I'm the one that's going to edit your sentences. And I gotta say, it's a great job. So if you want to become a copy editor like me, you're going to need a style guide. My personal favorite is the Chicago Manual of Style. That's basically the rules you're going to follow. Then you are going to need a tool or a system where you'll manage and store all your content. But more about that a bit later. You're also going to need a writing assistant such as Grammarly. It's not going to do the job for you, but it's going to help a lot. And you'll need to find some ways to, you know, relax, recharge your batteries, or achieve inner peace of mind after a long day, because sometimes it's kind of an exhausting job. And one of the things you'll need to focus on is tone of voice. And that's basically the way you talk to your customers. And most brands nowadays use this conversational, relaxed way of talking. And they're trying to make their potential customers feel welcome and comfortable. Personally, I distinguish between two concepts. The brand voice, that's basically the narrator that's everywhere on your website, on all your landing pages, your advertisements, marketing automation, your company's accounts on social media, etc., etc. And on the other hand, you have all these individual voices of your employees or colleagues. And as you can see here, some of them may be a bit funnier or more entertaining than others, while some can be a bit more serious, more formal. And I think that's completely okay, because you shouldn't want to change the way they write. You shouldn't take away their individual voices. I think it makes them more personal, more human, maybe even more likable. So should the brand voice be consistent? Yes, absolutely, always. But the individual voices should not. So that's like the basic distinction. And we've decided to use this conversational tone of voice. And sometimes we experiment a bit, and you know, sometimes the content is successful, gets a lot of engagement, and sometimes it doesn't, and that's okay. So I would say be consistent, but if you have some great ideas, do try them. It's going to be a lot of fun. You know, it shouldn't ruin your brand, obviously, but I don't think you should just stay in one place. You should move forward. Okay. And now this is basically the part where I'm going to give you a boring lecture on language development, because I'm a linguist. So when the term website was first used in the 16th century, well, obviously now I'm kidding, but there's a reason why I'm mentioning history of language, and I'm going to explain a bit later. So originally, as you can see, it was two separate words, web space site. Then it became hyphenated, so web hyphen site. And now I'm sure all of you use this version on an everyday basis. It's website, one word, no hyphen, no space. And basically what happens in language, or perhaps everywhere, people are lazy and they want to simplify everything. And on our website and basically everywhere in all our content, we use American English, but you're going to find yourself in situations where you have like one word or one phrase, but 5 possible spellings or ways to write that. But yeah, all of which are acceptable in that language variant, but you gotta make a choice. And you know, so which one are you going to choose? My piece of advice is always choose the simplest one, because that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen with that word. Probably comes as no surprise to you now that ebook is way more popular than e-book. And the big question is, how can you ensure that your website or your project contains only, you know, the more preferred version? You know, I think all these inconsistencies make your content look sloppy and maybe even can put off some potential customers. So what I do is I use our own product, Kentico Content. It's a headless content management system. And I use the full text search a lot. Hopefully you can see this slide. Not sure what happened right now, but I hope it's going to be okay. So I try to search for ebook, no hyphen, and I can see that ebook is used 39 times on our website, which is content.ai. And then I try to check for e-book, and I can see there are no results. So, you know, I can sleep tight at night knowing that all is well, and there's no such inconsistency. And I know this is a very basic scenario, but imagine you change your messaging or positioning, and you have all these phrases and sentences that need to be updated, and this is the right way to do it. I also use filtering. You can see here that I'm looking at CTA banners that are published, so live somewhere on our website, and we have 32 different banners. And when I click on one of them, I can see the copy, see what content can do for you. And here on the right, it shows that it's used in 11 pages or components, like parts of a page. And when I create a new version and I update the copy, all of this gets updated automatically. So I don't have to change it in all those places, which is a huge lifesaver. Not sure if you have any experience with traditional content management systems, but it would be like a major buzzkill to scan through every individual page and try to find that out-of-date, inconsistent piece of information. So this is way, way easier, and I use it every day, and it's great. And I also use a lot of other tools and features. This is our editorial calendar. It shows all our published content and everything that's scheduled. So it can also ensure content consistency in your project. And you can see that here for next Tuesday, we have a lot of content items scheduled. We're releasing our new user interface, and we need to update a lot of screenshots and information and media on our website. So this is the way we check that everything's all right. And I feel like I've been rambling on for long enough. So I guess this is it for me. And if you're passionate about languages and managing content like I am, please reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can even use, you can send me an email message. My email address is zaneta@kentico.com, or you can even check out our own product or our website, that's content.ai. Yeah, so I guess this is it. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you, Ilesh, for inviting me.
That's okay. Thank you for presenting. There's one question, and it's from me, and it's probably one that I would probably find where I probably send you a blog post and find that it's not really great. But if you could have a look at that question.
Okay, let's see. So, do you ever get something that needs checking that you have to send back as it needs a full rewrite? Well, I wouldn't say probably a full rewrite. Usually those articles are great and they just need a little bit of polishing. I remember that you recently published an article about content modeling on our blog. Is that right? And it was perfect. Yeah, so definitely not something that would need a full rewrite. So usually I'm very excited about content because we have a lot of amazing authors. Yeah.
That's great, thank you. Do you have any questions for Zaneta? Oh, you got one, yeah. Go.
Sorry, I was just typing it up. May as well just ask, do you have like a kind of a guide for brand tone of voice in Kentico? Or is it just something that's kind of known and understood across the people who are doing the content?
Yeah, sure we do. And it's available online. I can provide the link in the chat. But personally, if you'd like me to recommend some books, definitely try, I don't know, for example, this one, Practical English Usage by Michael Swan, or Dreyer's English, An Utterly Correct Guide to Clarity and Style. It's like my Bible, so try it.
Great, thank you.
Okay, great. So thank you. And then lastly, we've got Regine. I don't know if you're back.
I'm back. Hi.
Awesome. Hey.
Hi. Yeah, sorry, I had a call, so I was like, oh, I have to get off. Hello, everyone. I am Regine Gilbert, and I'm going to be talking today about inclusive design for a digital world. So I am going to, we hear this all day. You're muted, and can you share your screen? So, you know, like, or am I sharing my screen? So let me just make sure I am. Do you all see my screen?
Yeah.
Do you see yourselves, or do you see my slides?
No, we see your screen. That's great.
Okay. Where is, 1 second, go back. So usually you can turn on captions here. So I'm looking to see where that is. I don't see it. Okay. So hi, everyone. I am Regine Gilbert. I am author of Inclusive Design for a Digital World, Designing with Accessibility in Mind. And I'm currently an industry assistant professor at NYU's Tandon School of Engineering. So I wanted to talk to you all about inclusion and accessibility. Accessible design focuses on the outcome or the end result of a design project, and inclusive design is closely related to accessibility, but rather than an outcome, it's a methodology for how to approach design. It's a process for creating a design that can be used by a diverse group of people. So one of the questions that I ask oftentimes is like, who might you be excluding from the start? This is something to really think about. Kat Holmes wrote the book Mismatched Design, and in the book she says that an exclusion habit is the belief that whoever starts the game also sets the rules of the game. We think we don't have power to change the game, so we abdicate our accountability. We keep repeating the same behaviors over and over. And I love this because everybody here has the opportunity to change things in our own little small ways. In our big companies, we can do small things. And I'm a big, big fan of planting seeds, because I think we can do, you know, you plant seeds and they grow over time. So, you know, there are approximately 1 billion people on the planet who have a disability. That's 1 in 7. And oftentimes when we're creating things, we tend to leave folks with disabilities out. So what to keep in mind are these 4 areas when you're thinking about accessibility and designing for accessibility: is visual, blindness, low vision, color blindness; hearing, deafness and hard of hearing; motor, the inability to use a mouse, slow response time, limited motor control; and cognitive, learning disabilities, distractibility, inability to focus on large amounts of information. So there are web standards out there. Some people know about them, some people don't. I know when I was studying design, I did not learn about the web content accessibility guidelines. Anybody here learn about them? Yes, a few of you. So the Web Content Accessibility Standards or Guidelines are part of guidelines published by the Web Accessibility Initiative and the World Wide Web Consortium, the W3C, the main international standard organization for the internet. So the WCAG has 4 areas: perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust, which is considered POUR, P-O-U-R. And perceivable focuses on vision and hearing. Operable focuses on motor. Understandable is cognition, and robust is motor and cognition. So the WebAIM Million, webaim.org is a great resource for accessibility. And in February 2019 and February 2020, WebAIM conducted an accessibility evaluation of the homepages for the top 1 million websites and over 100,000 additional interior sites. What they found was that the most common web content accessibility guideline failures were low contrast, missing alternative text, empty links, missing form labels, empty buttons, and missing document language. These are like low bar things that we could all, work on. So low contrast, that is like the number 1 issue across the board. And it is probably one of the easiest things to do because there are so many color contrast checkers out there to use. I like to give this example. There are 4 boxes. The first one says this is hard to read. It has a blue background with a red text. Beneath that is like a neon green background with yellow text that says this is also hard to read. There is a green background with a lighter green text that says this is easy to read, and a yellow background with black text that says also easy to read, right? And a lot of time, like we see this all the time, low contrast. I want to talk a minute about inclusion and equality. I have 3 images. In the first image, in all the images, there are 3 people who are watching a baseball game. In the first one, the 3 people are standing on cartons or boxes, and they're all able to see the game in different ways, right? The tallest person is looking over a fence. The second tallest person is also looking over the fence. And the third tallest person is looking through the fence. Next up is equity. And in equity, the fence is still there. And one person is looking over the fence. One person is standing on a box looking over the fence. And the other person is standing on 2 boxes looking over the fence. And then there's liberation. It's completely removing the fence, right? So when we are creating things, we have the opportunity to make people, feel free and able to use what we're creating. So this is an inclusion example that happened about a month ago. I don't know if anyone's heard of the app Clubhouse. Clubhouse is used primarily right now for iPhones. But this person, Candace Poon, said, this was on Twitter, at Join Clubhouse is so inclusive, I can't join because of my last name. Because her last name in some circles is considered like a slur. And so this is the kind of thing that, how do you, when you're setting up a site or an app, there are things that you make sure that, you don't want people doing wrong things or being insulting, but there are also things to consider, like this is actually somebody's name, right? Another example I want to give is auto captions. So I want to sincerely apologize. I wanted to have captions in this presentation, but I'm having technical issues and our Zoom didn't have it either. But this happens a lot where the captions are not 100%, right? And it says, hello there, my name is Dr. William Toilet and welcome to, right? So we see this oftentimes where things could be better. So it boils down to strategy. At the end of the day, you have to think about what it is you're going to be doing and how you're going to be doing it. And I'm providing some resources here. I think the A11Y project is a great resource. A11Y is a numeronym for accessibility. There are 11 characters between the A and the Y, and the A11Y project, it's a good example. If you go to a11yproject.com, it's a good example of an accessible site. It's also has great resources. Stark is a great plugin for accessibility and adding that to your design process. There's so many contrast checkers out there, accessibility checklists, and the Axe Chrome plugin. So some inclusive design tips are, get to know who you're designing for, make inclusive design a part of every stage of your product development, consider designing from the non-visual experience, and assure color contrast is clear enough for those with vision issues, including color blindness and low vision users. So a question I have for everybody is, how might we use our skills to make a more equitable future? I would love to know in the chat. How might we use our skills to make a more equitable future? And that is all I had. Thank you. My email is rg1508@nyu.edu, and I am very active on Twitter at reg_INEE.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I think there are some questions in the chat as well.
Okay, so let's see, where do I start? I think Holly. What would you suggest to solution architects when we have been given set requirements from the business? Should we be thinking about challenging accessibility or assume this has already been thought about by the UX design and business? I don't think it's good to assume anything first. I think you should ask if accessibility has been thought about when going through the business requirements. I do say this because I've had actually a few students in the past month reach out to me and say, I'm really pushing for accessibility and they don't want to do it. And I don't know what to do. And I'm getting like in arguments with people. And I say, sometimes you have to back off for your own psychological safety. I believe in psychological safety in the workplace. So you have to know when to push and when to back off. So I would first ask. So Holly, I hope that answers your question. So Shannon is asking, what is missing document language? So when a web page is created, language is usually added. It should be added at the top, and I'll refer to my developers here that are here. But you should add language, and a lot of times it's not there. And I don't know if any of the other panelists have anything to add.
No, that's right. That's exactly, yeah. And we did like a meetup a couple of months ago about accessibility, and it's a very, we're talking about women in tech here, but there's another area as well, like with accessibility, and we should be including everyone. It's not just like one sort of area. And accessibility, sometimes we find like we create projects and there's no time for accessibility, but we should make sure that accessibility is at the start and really, all the way through. And I agree with the point that you mentioned earlier, where it's got to fall into every stage. It can't just be like at the start or during the middle. It's got to be through the whole process. And it's really important.
Yeah. I don't know if did I get all the questions? I think so.
I think so. It's yeah, thank you so much. If there's
Yeah.
any other questions, by all means get in touch with every one that's actually spoken on the MMT Tech Meetup today. And I just want to thank everyone for joining this call and the presenters, and yeah, thank you and have a nice evening. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.